Good afternoon and welcome to Changing the Game, our web event this afternoon. My name is Holly Dale. I'm your host for today. And before I introduce our special guest and our panel, I just wanted to give a couple of quick housekeeping notes. All attendees are on mute so that we can make this a great experience for everyone without any accidental disruption. But if you need to communicate with us, you can always put a message in the chat to the panel if you're having any technical issues. And we also have a Q&A section you'll see in your control panel. So we'll be covering those at the end of the webinar. But if you want to go ahead and put those in as we go, we may be able to answer some typing or we'll answer them live at the end. So if you come up with a question, don't hesitate. Go ahead and put it right there in the Q&A and we'll be sure to answer. Without further ado, let's get started. Here at Visual Edge IT, we support our customers with the strength of our technical expertise and reliable solutions to meet business technology challenges. So it is with special excitement that we are pleased to welcome Mr. Kevin Mawai to our webinar today. Now, Kevin is a coach for the Arizona State University football team and a Pro Football Hall of Famer, class of 2019. He has played for the Seattle Seahawks, the New York Jets, and the Tennessee Titans. One of the greatest centers in the NFL, Kevin has always been a teammate relied on to perform his duties at a high level. He boasts a 177-game playing streak. He helped his team earn a division title. He helped set a franchise benchmark for an NFL low sacks allowed, including no sacks for 5 consecutive games. And Kevin consistently opened huge holes for running backs, as evidenced by a 1,000-yard rusher in 13 of his 16 pro seasons, which also included a 2,000-yard rusher in 2009. And if you're wondering what Kevin's milestone-filled career brings to our event today, Kevin is going to share with you a game-changing story of disruption turned into advantage. So please join me in welcoming Pro Football Hall of Famer, Kevin Mawai.
That year we rushed for 2,006 yards. I think he was only the 5th running back in the history of the league to do that. And it was fortunate for me because it was my last season. So I got to finish up my career on a high note with a benchmark running back like that. But the story I want to talk to you about, we played the Arizona Cardinals. It was like week 16, 17. I don't even remember the week, but it was an up and down game, back and forth game. And at the end of the game, we were down 13-17. And the Cardinals just punted the ball to us, and they downed the ball on the -1 yard line. So we're now backed up into our own territory. There's less than 3 minutes. There's 2 minutes and 37 seconds left in the game, and we have to go 99 yards to have a chance to win the game. And not just kick the field. We have to score a touchdown to win the game. And so that series, it was an 18-play series that took up the entire 2 minutes and 37 seconds. And in that series, things happened that, for me as a football guy, it's one of the moments that stood out in my career. And the reason being is because of all the things that happened. We started off, and I'm not going to tell you all the plays, but some of the highlights. We're 1st and 10 on the -1. We hit a first down pass. And the next 2 passes are incomplete. We're sitting at 4th down and 4 yards to go, backed up in our own territory. Quarterback throws the ball to a young receiver by the name of Kenny Britt, who was our 1st-round draft pick. He's covered like glue. Somebody's on top of him. Well, he jumps up and reaches over the back of the defender to catch the ball for the 1st down. That was the first amazing play in that series. The next series, we go in, and it's 1st and 10, and Vince Young throws a pass. It gets tipped by my defender. I'm actually blocking the defensive lineman. He runs off my block and then gets in the throwing lane, blocks the ball. It tips it up. But Bo Scaife, our tight end, is still running his route, and he stays on his route and stays on track, and he catches the ball in stride off the tip. That was another phenomenal play that in that situation could have went either way. Go down a few more plays. It's now 2nd and 8, and we got to stop the clock. Vince Young throws the ball to a young tight end named Jared Cook. He catches the ball. He runs out of bounds. Gains 12 yards, runs out of bounds. Now there's a minute left on the clock, 1 minute, 3 seconds left on the clock. The next play is incomplete. The next play, Vince Young gets pressure out of the pocket. He scrambles for 6 yards and gains some positive yardage. Now there's less than 50 seconds on the clock. It's 48 seconds. The next play is 3rd and 4. The Cardinals bring 7 defenders. They blitz 7 guys. We only have 6 guys in protection. So somebody's not going to be blocked. And And in that situation, as an offensive lineman, it's my job to call the blocking schemes. But there's just the numbers don't add up, right? There's 6 against 7. Somebody's gonna come free. And fortunately for us, we picked up the 6 of the most 7 dangerous guys, and the quarterback, Vince, was able to avoid the last guy, dump the ball off, and get rid of the ball without taking the sack. Now we're sitting at 4-4. There's 4th down and 4 yards to go. And we complete the ball to a young receiver named Lavelle Hawkins out of Cal. He catches a 13-yard pass, gets out of bounds. And then, and so now we're in territory now. We're now on the plus side of the field moving in. It's 1st and 10, Boscape again, catches a pass, he gets out of bounds. And then we're at the 26-yard line, incomplete pass. We're at the 26-yard line again, incomplete pass. This time the Cardinals rush 6 defenders. We only have 5 to block. So somehow we're not matching up. It's like our protections aren't matching up with their blitzes. But, the running back goes the wrong way. He doesn't pick up the guy that he was supposed to pick up. But Vince Young steps up in the pocket, throws a dart across the middle to Jared Cook again, who gets out of bounds and stops the clock. Now it's 1st and goal to go on the 9-yard line. And it's less than 21 seconds left to go. We go incomplete pass. We give up a sack for a -1 yards. And now the clock's ticking, call a couple of timeouts. It's 3rd and goal to go. And we would throw a pass in the end zone. And I remember this vividly because the guy that the ball was supposed to be thrown to got held. Nate Washington was our wide receiver. He's sitting in the slot, which is just outside the offensive tackle. And if he catches it clean, he's going to walk into the end zone with a touchdown. Well, he got held. They didn't call it. We called a timeout. And I remember being in a huddle, and Nate's complaining to the referee about him missing the call. Now, at the moment, it sounds like a big issue. But in the extreme moment, what he needed to do is forget about that play, get to the next one, because it's now 4th and goal to go with 6 seconds to go. And all I can remember telling Nate is, just do your job. Just do your job. And don't worry. Let the stripes get paid to do their job. You do your job, and things will happen for us. We get up to the line of scrimmage. They call a timeout. We call a timeout. We're playing this cat and mouse game. And finally, we have to snap the ball. 4 seconds to go. We're protecting. It's like an eternity. Vince Young steps up into the pocket. He throws the ball back to the end zone. Kenny Britt comes out of nowhere and a diving catch, catches the ball, lands in the end zone, touchdown, and the Titans win the game. So this is phenomenal. It was people are going crazy, and it's just an exciting moment for my career and how we accomplished that deal. Because what happened is it took us. It was the odds were insurmountable. We're 99 yards away. We got 1 or 2 timeouts left. We're playing against a pretty good defense, and we have all these young players playing. And so anybody was like, "Oh, this game's over with." Matter of fact, people were starting to leave the stands. But we found a way to get the job done. And so you look back on that, and it's like, what does this have to do with me and our business and what we do? Well, there's lessons that I learned through that process. And multiple times in my career, I've had situations like this. And this is one of the things that always stands out, because I've been playing football since I was 8. And one of the lessons I've learned early on, and I still believe today, is no matter how bad things look, just keep playing. Just keep going. And sometimes, your job gets frustrating, or the project seems like it's at its dead end, or it's a standstill, or whatever. But my encouragement is this: just keep doing what you're doing, keep playing. And when the odds are against you and you feel like things are falling apart, the other thing I would tell you is keep playing, but don't forget about the fundamentals. Because lots of times people try to do extraordinary things, but they forget to just do the ordinary things extraordinarily. And so I think the guys that wear this yellow jacket and that have this logo in their life, if you ask them what made them so great, they'll never say it was that one catch I made in the Super Bowl, or they won't ever give you 1 or 2 moments. What they'll tell you is the everyday in and out daily fundamentals that we had to perfect. It's the first step that I take as an offensive lineman. It's my hand-eye coordination. Every day, Jerry Rice is taking catches, looking through his hands. It's the simple things that we make look easy, because we spent so much time developing the ordinary skills that we need to do to be great. And I think lots of times in life, people try to fix stuff. They try the shortcut, or they rig things, or instead of just going back to the fundamentals. Where did I mess up? Or I get out of sorts and I'm trying to fix everything, when many times all you have to do is go back to your A, B's, and C's. Everybody wants to get to XYZ and they forget about what got me here. Let me go back to the basics and start from there and work my way back up. And so in that moment, in that game, all I could think of when we're on 4th and 4 is don't worry about somebody else's job. Just do your job the best that you possibly can and trust that the people around them are doing their jobs. It becomes an accountability issue. And so my job was to be accountable to 9 of the 10 other men on the field and to my coaching staff to make sure, one, I called the right call because I knew the defense. I knew what the structure they were going to give me. 2, that I could handle the guy that was in front of me, Darnell Dockett, who was a pretty good player at the time. And 3, to trust the guy behind me is going to find the receiver who I got to trust is going to get open so we can score a touchdown. But it all goes back to the fact that I had to rely on my daily fundamentals and the ABCs of my job to be successful in a moment where I could have lost my mind and lost focus of everything. So that's the one thing, is just do your job and understand it's always about the basics when things go haywire. And so going back to the fundamentals, it's that simple. And for me, when I teach guys and when I coach guys, I don't coach them the end result. I coach them how to get to the end result. Because somewhere in that moment between learning to be very basics and getting to the end result, you find out what you're good at and you find out what you're capable of. And I encourage guys to explore what they can do and what they can't do. For me, I knew what my limitations were and I found a way to excel within my limitations. But I also knew that the things that I wasn't good in, I had to ask for help to get help in those. I played at 280 pounds. I consistently played against defensive linemen with 335 pounds, 340 pounds. I was outmatched physically lots of times. But there's things I knew I could rely on, my quickness, my leverage, and my footwork. But when I had to block a guy all by myself, I couldn't do that. So I would have to ask for help, make a call to my guard. Hey, I need some bump help or whatever it may be. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. When you're stuck in a jam in your job, in your business or whatever, it's one thing to want to do it yourself, but there's a whole lot more courage involved when you got to say, hey, I need your help. And I think, understanding what this company is all about is understanding that there's resources that somebody else might have that you don't have. You just got to be willing to reach out to them and say, hey, man, I heard you working on this project. I'm stuck in this jam. You got some ideas for me? And that's what we do as football players. We collaborate. Every year, 400 offensive line coaches get together in Cincinnati, Ohio. And not to say, look what I've done. I had a 2,000-yard rusher, but hey, how did you guys block this guy? How you handle this blitz? What technique are you teaching your guys to handle this situation? And it's a collaborative effort. And that's what successful people do. They collaborate with other people that might have better ideas than they have or different ideas that I've never even heard of. And so then the other part of it, the last part of that whole scenario is, just keep playing, just keep going, go back to the ABCs. And the last thing is don't lose sight of the vision of what you're trying to accomplish. Sometimes things can look so bad in the moment that you forget what you're trying to accomplish. And you lose sight of the forest because of the trees that are in your way. And so in the moment in the game, I could have been worried about the call that wasn't made or the tip pass or the sack that we gave up on 1st and goal, 1st and 9 inside the 10-yard line. But instead, the vision was to get to the end zone. And so in order to make that vision become a reality, now I had to go back and rely on the plan that I had. And so when you're building your project or you're working on something or you're looking, what your end goal is, always know what the vision is, but always keep the game plan in sight. Understand how you're going to accomplish that. Because sometimes we see the vision and we get so distracted because of all the stuff going on around us that we lose sight of what our plan was. And most people, when they put their plan together, it's an if this, then that scenario. If this happens, I'm going to do that. If this happens, then it's that whole chart. If this, yes. If no, go here. Okay, down here. If it's yes, here. Game planning for football is the same exact way. If they show me this front, this is the call I'm going to make. But if they show me this front, I'm going to change the call to something else. And in the middle of that call, if this happens, this is my reaction to it. And so we hone our skills so much as football players in game planning that we've covered almost every scenario that could possibly happen before it takes place. So when this comes and we're now on the -1 yard line, have to go 90, we've already practiced it 1,000 times in our heads and physically on the football field to know that, okay, this is what the scenario is. This is the game clock management. This is what's going to happen at this point in time. We know when the TV timeouts are coming. So you use all of that to your advantage. But when you get caught up in the moment and lose sight of what the vision is, all that becomes a blur. And I tend to think that people in business are the same way. Sometimes they get so caught up in the mess that they got to deal with at the moment, they forget and what the vision's supposed to be. And so they're trying to see the vision and they get off their game plan. And so my encouragement is this: don't lose sight of the vision, but also don't lose sight of your game plan. You know, what steps are you taking to get to where you want to go? And make sure that you haven't deviated so far from the goal that you're not even on the right track anymore. Many times it's easy for us to get on a rabbit trail and don't know how we get back out of the hole, because we just keep trying to fix stuff. We keep to shortcut it. We try to fix this and we mend that and do that. And now we're like, we got duct tape everywhere instead of actually just getting back on track. And so those are the 3 lessons I learned in this scenario is just keep playing. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get dirty and it's going to get messy, but you just got to keep playing through. You can't quit on it, because once you quit, it becomes easier the next time. It's like, I ain't doing it. I remember when I had this project and that went down, I ain't doing it this time. You know, so you kind of give up on yourself. And then go back to the fundamentals. Understand that there's a system that you put in place, and if there's a kink, you got to go back and find that kink. And for me as a football player, always go back to the fundamentals of my process. What's my stance look like? What does my start look like? What's my body language when I take a pass set? What does my body carriage look like? Am I leaning? Am I not? And that's the ABCs of your job. And then the other part of it is never lose sight of the vision, but always remember what the plan is to get to the vision. And so if you do those things, and look, I'm not an IT guy. I am my family's IT master. Like, I can hook up the router, I can set the iPhones, and I can figure out how to do Zoom. But when it comes to like high-end IT stuff, we got a number at ASU. We call them, they come fix it. But here's what I do know about this, right? I don't know software. I don't know hardware. But I know that there's somewhere a connection in between somewhere that it all has to work. If it doesn't work, what's my check system? If it's on the software side of it, I reboot it. I look for malware or whatever it is. And if that's okay, now I got to go back to the beginning and look and see how it's connected. Is the router right? Is the wires connected? Is there a short in the wire? And it's a process that we all go through. I don't care what business you're in. There's always some kind of a process. And if there's something wrong in one end or the other, the best thing I found to do is go back to the beginning, start at the basics, and work my way back up. And I guess it would be like smart people jargon, reverse engineer it and figure out where the message is. And that's what we do as football players. Where did I mess up at on the field? Let me reverse engineer my technique to the very beginning and see where I messed up. And I think that's an applicable lesson in any part of life. It's particularly in what I do, but I think also in the IT business and how you guys help each other and things like that. So all of that is to say this, is that there's chaos taking place in every part of your life, no matter where it is. You got to figure out how to get recentered, refocused, and get back to the basics, and always keep pushing forward and moving on. And so that's kind of the lesson I have for you guys. And I know somebody else is going to speak. I'm going to sit here and hang out and listen, and hopefully I made sense to some of you guys.
You know, Kevin, what you're talking about there is spot on, hand in glove, what we're talking about. It always comes back to the foundation. You got the plans, you've got the talent, but you've got to have that foundation, that base starting place. That's what all of this is about, whether we're talking football, whether we're talking IT, whether we're talking getting your kids through school and being a successful parent. Doesn't matter. It all comes down to the foundation.
That's the hardest thing to do, by the way. I got two 20-year-olds.
I got 5 of them.
That's a tough job. So
if we have any teachers on today, thank you. I think we've all, most of us have probably, we thought we appreciated you and knew what you did, but thank you. And thank you, Kevin, because I think that what you're saying would be important in any time, but especially this year. Because the things you're being focused, I think a lot of us are being asked to do more with less and take on things. And it's easy to forget those fundamentals, just like in that drive where fans are giving up. You know, it's been a tough year for business, personally, we're all trying to do a lot right now. And so talking about that disruption and being able to use the skills that you had and turn that into the advantage is what we want to be able to help businesses do and see. And I think the fact that we have everyone on here that's already participating, you're taking that first step, you're being aware, you're helping build that foundation. And so I think that's just an excellent story. I've got a couple of those. I have to go listen back to the recording and maybe put some of those notes up around my computer to remind myself personally of some of that advice this year. And we're really grateful that you were able to come on and share that and be able to stick around and answer some questions and maybe give us some additional insights here as well.
Absolutely.
I'm going to introduce the other panelists that we have on here, Alan Conboy and Peter Avery. Alan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Peter, and then we'll get started with y'all's piece. Everybody hang on, because remember, after this, we are going to give away some amazing prizes, and we're going to answer your questions. So make sure that you stick around for the next section of this great content. Alan, I'll hand it over to you and Peter.
Thanks, Holly, and thanks again, Kevin. So my name's Alan Conboy. I'm the Office of the CTO here with Scale Computing. Translation scales dark matter and Swiss Army knife. Do a little bit of everything, trying to make sure that we're out ahead of the game when challenges come up for you, that we know exactly what it is that you're going to need before you even need it. That's kind of what we're here for. And Peter, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Peter Avery. I'm the National Director of IT Field Services for Visual Edge Technology. It's interesting that you talk about fundamentals. We've got a whole team of engineers across the United States that are experts in different areas of technology, everything from Azure to running those wires in the wall like you were talking about. And it comes down to fundamentals every time. You've always got to drive that home. Me and myself, I've got 30 years in the business, doing everything from doing deep dive forensics and deep security things with ATF, FBI, and thousands and thousands of customers throughout my career. And you're right, every time it's fundamentals and getting the job done that's in front of you. So
it's absolutely the foundation, man. So let's do this. We talked about what changing the game looks like. And Kevin, great way to relate that. That game, it was a nail biter to the end. There's no two ways about it. But we've seen that same thing writ large over the last 8 months. All of us have. You know, there's a lot to unpack that's happened in just the last few months. Let's face it, there's not a person on this webinar, on this panel, that hasn't been touched by this thing. You know, it has fundamentally changed everything from the most basics to well, everything. The trick is figuring out what's permanently changed, what's only temporary. You know, if we back up to March, you know, January, February, yeah, there's something going on in the world, but we're all living our lives. Suddenly in March, life hit the brakes. It slowed way down real fast. And yeah, we all hoarded toilet paper, and IT groups tried to get their hands on every laptop on the planet. We all started making bread and growing our own gardens again. But the surprising part was things continued to get done. You know, we found a way. Why? Foundation. You know, let's talk about what you guys, IT guys, did. Now, first thing that every IT group on the planet did was went running out to everywhere from Best Buy to, you know, every VAR everywhere, bought every laptop they could get their hands on. Tried to image corporate images, etc., on this stuff and ship it out to end users. And then try to figure out how to get folks that weren't terribly technical able to connect and continue to contribute, continue to do their jobs without somebody standing over their shoulder telling them, oh yeah, click this, click that. Here's how you figure out how to use a VPN. And in the process, we collectively pushed VPNs way beyond what they were ever intended to do. Way beyond. You know, there's nothing like trying to get someone from accounting to figure out that, oh yeah, you just need to keep trying to reconnect your VPN connection until you get something stable. We discovered that IT infrastructure, the stuff that we'd spent the last, 20, 30 years building out, that works great in an office, doesn't always work well remote. You know, that spreadsheet that's doing some local calculation off a remote database, well, suddenly you're going from milliseconds of latency to seconds. There's a problem there. We discovered tons of that all across every vertical, everywhere in the IT world. One of the more important things we discovered is that using VPN, connecting our pristine corporate resources, networks, and environments, we were suddenly exposed to so many security problems. Reason why is we were busy connecting our pristine corporate networks to the least secure networks on the face of planet Earth, the home networks, where the teenagers download whatever the heck they want, where, you know, grandma likes to play online games. The attack surface increase is terrifying, and we've seen the results firsthand. But one of the most important and absolutely game-changing things that came out of this is we discovered, management discovered, business owners and businessmen everywhere discovered that remote work can actually work. And in a lot of cases, better than it even did in the office. That's huge. You know, the way that we responded to COVID-19 in its first wave, in its first phase, well, we learned a bunch. We learned that a complete VDI implementation, had it already been in place, would have helped immensely. It makes work portable. It makes work transportable. Work from anywhere. But a lot of guys that hadn't gone there yet, or guys that had, you know, some legacy VDI infrastructure, discovered very quickly that legacy VDI implementations are way too complex, way too expensive, way too many moving parts, and they don't necessarily scale terribly well, especially in times of sudden change. Going from, 10 guys working remotely to 300 overnight. A lot of people discovered, wow, this doesn't work. One of the things that folks tried to do was try to lift and shift to the cloud. It's one thing to lift and shift a few server workloads to this cloud or that cloud or this cloud over here. It's something else to push end user computing and to try and do both. Well, a lot of folks figured out exactly how much of a Chinese finger trap cloud really can be. Easy to get into, sort of. Not so easy to get out of. And that lift and shift, ugly.
One thing that they forget a lot, Alan,
Yeah.
is when you do that lift and shift to the cloud, the same protections that you have in an on-premise environment, you have to take into account in that cloud environment as well. So it's not as easy as just putting your stuff in the cloud and hoping the cloud is going to protect you. The cloud is just simply your stuff on somebody else's equipment.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Peter. And quite frankly, when you centralize everything on a cloud, and so does Bob, and so does Fred, and so does every other company around you, really all that does is centralize targeting. Everything's in that door. All I have to do is get through that door.
And because it's on the cloud, it's a much bigger target.
Huge. It's got a bullseye painted right on the door.
Absolutely.
Now,
those fundamentals of firewalls and having the right ports blocked, making sure that your virtual infrastructure, that cloud-based infrastructure is protected and managed by a trusted partner. That's what it comes down to.
Oh yeah. It's funny you should mention that, because one of the things that we discovered is that what companies, businesses really needed was really flexible and easy to scale infrastructure that they own, that can be hybrid with cloud, because let's face it, there's times that cloud's the right place to have something,
Absolutely.
There's other times that on-premise is. Hands down, no question about that. We're seeing that writ large even before past February, where the mass migration to cloud slowed radically, and you've got quite a bit of folks going, wait a minute, that didn't work up there real well. Let's go ahead and pull that piece back down here, and folks moving into that hybrid model. Well, to even make a hybrid model work well, you've really got to have that flexible, easy to scale, easy to grow, gives you the same ease cloud experience, but without the Chinese finger trap, without the lift and shift. You know, a lot of folks discovered that hyperconverged infrastructure provided that and simultaneously made VDI an order of magnitude easier. Now, why does VDI matter here? It's work from anywhere, but I'll get into that in a second. You know, I'm going to reiterate on these last 2 points you see on your screen here. Cyber threats growing exponentially, and I'll pull up some numbers here in just a minute, but it's absolutely terrifying. Let's face it, guys, even before February, it wasn't 2006 anymore. The primary threats we were facing, yeah, you've still got the, you know, end user does something silly to a individual data set stuff. You've also got the, you know, construction worker with the backhoe missing his dig mark and cutting right through a line into the building. But those weren't the biggies anymore. The biggies are ransomware, crypto mining, cryptojacking, phishing attacks. Those sorts of attacks, those have been bringing businesses to their knees and actually forcing bankruptcies. They're that bad and growing fast. So what did we do? Simple. We did exactly the wrong thing, used VPN to shove remote access connectivity through connecting our networks to the least secure networks on planet Earth. Growing out the target-rich environment, if you will, for those attacks. What do we do now? I mean, here we are, staring down the barrel of a second wave. Everybody's still starting to settle things down a little bit. Oh, what we need to do is implement business resilience. It's foundational. End of the day, it is flatly foundational. Now, notice I didn't say business continuance. People know exactly what that is. Business resilience is the fundamental infrastructure that makes things like BC possible, but done in the modern world. Now, it would have been good to have that in place before March, but now's good too. Now, textbook definition of what business resilience is. I'm not going to sit here and read it to you. You guys don't need me to. Every single one of you on this webinar knows how to read this and understand what it is we're really talking about. But there's a recipe for it. And let's talk about what that is. In today's world, there's been a convergence of technologies that makes a fundamentally resilient infrastructure possible without breaking the bank. Something that's built very specifically for the needs of the everyman. Not just for the hallowed halls of the Fortune 50. It starts with hyperconverged infrastructure. Now, quite frankly, you're talking to scale computing, we're the folks that invented the term in the first place. I know, I was in the meeting back in 2011. Virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, and more importantly, it's plumbing, but rethought. And what I mean by rethought is, look, legacy VDI had so many different moving parts from so many different vendors with so much complexity and so much cost. Well, there was a reason that every year the analysts said it's the year of VDI, but guess what? It never was the year of VDI. Well, today's world, there's a better way. I told you, it's a confluence, a convergence of new technologies. These last two I'm going to layer in together, and here in a few minutes, Peter's going to speak about them very specifically, but they're the last two key parts of the business resilience infrastructure recipe that handles the modern threats, the forward-looking threats, as well as the historical stuff. Now, let's take a look at what those moving parts really are. Okay. HCI, hyperconverged infrastructure. It's very straightforward. It's a fundamental rethink on how virtualization should have been done in the first place instead of the science project we all had to live with for 20 years, going back to the last time a Clinton was in office. You know, let's face it, legacy virtualization had fantastic and noble goals and horrific, absolutely horrific execution, wildly inefficient. As Kevin was saying a few minutes ago, bits of duct tape holding it together here, bits of duct tape holding it together over there, it lost the plot. Absolutely did. What hyperconvergence really is sitting down and going, okay, how should this have been done in the first place, starting with a clean sheet of paper, taking those noble goals of highly available virtualization and realizing them from the ground up. Purpose-built and purpose-designing infrastructure to do what they should have done, rather than borrowing technologies from different technology domains. Yeah, here's a good graphic example. The legacy approach to virtualization is that what I like to call inverted pyramid of doom you see on the left side of your screen. Servers plus switches plus SAN plus hypervisor plus management server sitting over on the side, and layers upon layers of virtualized disk containers that at the end of the day are really just object files sitting on file systems, sitting on object files, sitting on other file systems, mapped across network fabric, sitting on object files, sitting on file systems, sitting on RAID sets. You know, it's amazing that that legacy approach, as incredibly fragile and inefficient as it was, ever actually worked, but it did. The new way gets rid of that, 7 hops to do a simple data change a period to a comma, and turns it into something that's sleek, efficient, fast, and about 60% more efficient, I should say, that's consumable by anybody, not just by guys with a series of acronyms behind them. Manageable by a team of folks that specialize in pulling all these things together. Step 1, first part of the recipe, hyperconverged infrastructure. Now, said it's virtualization done different, but not really. Not from an end user's perspective. From an end user perspective, if it runs on x86, it runs on HC3. Your server workloads running the entire gamut. But that takes us right to the second component, the second ingredient in the business resilience recipe, VDI. Take a look at those spaghetti diagrams you see. There's 3 of them on the right. One that brought that inverted pyramid of doom over from the left. You see, all of those legacy approaches to VDI absolutely shot through with complexity, shot through with licensing and costs at every single level. There's a reason it took a fleet of guys to make them work at all. Quite frankly, there's a reason that the only uptake in that digital transformation was the Fortune 50. Well, all of that complexity was built to run on top of inverted pyramid of doom, the legacy approach to virtualization over there on the left. We have a better way, an order of magnitude better way. You see, modern VDI does the same thing to virtualization that modern VDI approaches does the same thing to VDI that hyperconvergence did to legacy virtualization. Simplifies, streamlines, makes it work right. Now, we already talked through a lot of what the exact wrong thing to do was, so let's talk about what the right thing is. It's right here. Make VDI affordable. Make it intuitive, make it approachable, make it so it stands up in less than an hour from out of the box to I'm creating golden master images and carving off VDI VMs. Make it simple. make it cost effective, make it so, the local school district in the middle of Kansas can implement this without needing a fleet of specialists. Make it so that you don't need to be that, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 company to be able to implement infrastructure that lets you connect from anywhere on anything, keeps that endpoint separated, and gets rid of the, how do I want to put this, Peter? Gets rid of the exposure created by connecting to those remote, insecure networks.
There's a lot of people that are on the call that may not be technical enough to know what the implications of hooking that VPN in, like you talked about before.
Well, let's talk about that.
So you're physically, when you connect that VPN connection, it's just like taking a wire, plugging it into a device and plugging it into the wall in your office. That's conduit.
Let's expand on that real quick, because I think this is critically important. I even backed up here because that's where it really needs to be talked about. Is, look, I said right here in this slide, doing that using VPN thing was exactly the wrong thing to do. I meant it, because you literally just exposed your corporate network to everything that's in that home network that's VPNing in. Everything. Right now, it's estimated that 78% of home networks have some form of compromise or malware residing in them, just from this year. The second that an end user fires up a VPN connection and VPNs into your network, guess what you're now exposed to? The right thing to do is not to extend your network out, but use VDI plumbing to reach out and virtually pull your users back in, while simultaneously making the device they're accessing from, heck, the network they're accessing from, irrelevant. It has zero visibility or exposure into your corporate network. Think of it almost like, in medical terms, a blood-brain barrier. Nothing gets through it that doesn't need to. It's a reflection. Now, remote access, since that applies to what we're talking about here, Peter, it's simple. 2 virtual machines. You remember that massive set of spaghetti diagrams from a minute ago? We've replaced that. 2 VMs, a connection broker that knows how to talk to your infrastructure, talk to your authentication, and a gateway that simply presents a URL that a kid sitting at home waiting to get into his remote access to school, remote workers, etc., point a browser at. It's literally that simple. Automatically connected back through to their desktops, their workflows, their resources, nothing new to learn, nothing to change, and it makes that endpoint irrelevant. Their system dies, they literally can jump over to their smart fridge and point the browser on it right back at the same URL. Back up, back in. That's VDI proper. That's remote access done properly. You know, step 3 and step 4 here, the last 2 parts of this. This is important. In just 1 month, March, really only half of March, ransomware attacks, they jumped 148%. And that was before people started really in earnest rolling out those connections. In just the last 6 months. I'm not going to read these numbers to you. You can read them yourselves. You know, Peter, I'm going to have you speak very specifically to these last 2 pieces of the business resilience puzzle, recipe, if you will, that Scale and Visual Edge bring to the table to modernize infrastructure, to make folks ready for wave 2 and maybe even wave 3, and for whatever comes next.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that you have to do as a business owner, as an employee, is keep your information safe. And you have to defend your digital information, your IT assets against internal and external malicious accidents and threats. So the defense has to include some fundamental products, and it has to defend against cyber threats, protect that business data, and you have to have a team of experts that have awareness that something is going on. Without having that team of experts to first configure, put into place, and to make sure that that solution is protecting you, it doesn't do any good. It's not as easy as it was in the old days when you could go down and pick up a CD of Symantec, throw it into your computer, and install your antivirus. It's a little bit more complex because each day it's an evolution of attacks, an evolution of the ways that people attack your business. So how do we do that? Well, we have some tools to defend against cyber threats. Basic antivirus is a must. You have to be able to protect against antivirus, but antivirus is a specific type of tool that only protects you against those predefined, those predetermined types of threats that are going to hit your network. And because the bad guys are always changing how they're attacking you, they're also changing those programs. So those definitions, those virus definitions, even though they might be updated in real time, so the bad guys are also updating their tools in real time as well. So then comes advanced endpoint protection. So advanced endpoint protection is significantly different than antivirus because it's not just looking at virus definitions, it's looking at the behaviors of how programs are running on systems. So it's looking for wide-scale renaming of files. It's also looking for where data is going and where it's coming from, so that it can anticipate a problem before it becomes widespread. And then you tie that advanced endpoint protection to proactive monitoring. So you want to make sure it's tied to a SOC that not only is gathering information about your business, but all the surrounding businesses that tie into that same SOC. And it's looking for trends, not only in your community, but worldwide. Because the attacks today aren't coming from the guy that lives down the street, that knows about your business. It's widespread attacks from Russia, Korea, all over the place. And so it's constantly hitting your network in different ways. So that proactive monitoring that's tied to it in the SOC, that's monitored by people, real human beings that are sitting there watching these behaviors in real time, looking for ways to protect you. So advanced endpoint provides the defense to protect, detect, and undo known and unknown threats. So it doesn't just stop that particular virus, but if a virus starts to go through, it will actually isolate that machine or that VM instance from the rest of the network and protect it. It offers a broad range of attacks from different modes of security threats and attacks. These modes of attacks include malware and ransomware, and any new threats that are evolving, because it's looking for those behaviors that are viral in nature. It provides remediation on the spot. So it instantly mitigates and allows you to roll back that machine to before the problem even existed, so that you're no longer having to recover a system and recover files. All you do is you roll the system back to before the problem happened. All your files come back and it's business as usual. And it has the capability of detecting threats in advance through AI. And it's very important that artificial intelligence that there is as good as the programmers that put it in place. So even though it's gathering information from all around the world and prepping you for the next attack that might be coming, it's still got to be tied to that SOC. And those trusted advisors that you're bringing on to help you manage your network, make sure that you have those fundamental protections in place. This is the next tool in the toolbox that's evolved over the past few years. That snapshot that you can roll back to is critical. And then having that all tied together with the Security Operations Center is key. So that antivirus, that advanced endpoint protection, that NOC, and the Security Operations Center, you can see on the screen that they're layered on top of each other. The core fundamental is the antivirus, the single endpoint. It scans for those predefined threats. that advanced endpoint protection blocks malicious attempts, provides ransomware protection, and then overall you have Big Brother, the SOC, the Security Operations Center, that's watching you, keeping you safe, keeping your business information protected.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. That is a huge component in a business resilience solution. It's foundational. It's much like Kevin was talking about in that Cardinals game. Having the right foundation in place, the right planning in place, the right practice in place, it's that baseline, right? If you've taken the time to build that, when you wind up on the 1 yard line of the opposing team and you've got 99 yards in front of you, you have the ability to execute. Much like Kevin was talking about. That's what business resilience is really all about, is building that foundation, building that plan, having an infrastructure that all of the pieces are built to work hand in glove together so that business continues no matter what, no matter when, no matter where, no matter who. Full stop. The other piece of those last two components of the business resilience recipe, backup and DR. At the end of the day with HC3, we just built that in too. I probably should have mentioned when we decided to build HC3 all those years ago, one of the things we wanted to get rid of was the entire concept of licensing in the first place when it comes to the infrastructure. No equivalency to all of the other silliness that the other guys out there in the world want to nickel and dime you to death over. We just build it in, include it all in the cost of the nodes. Site-to-site replication, backup, snapshotting to a level nobody else in the industry even gets close to, up to 6,000 snapshots per virtual hard drive, per VM, everywhere in the cluster. All of them directly clonable, startable, runnable. You can literally mount them up and copy data out of them, the whole bit. But you don't need to be a VCP and a CCNE and a SNIA certified storage engineer to stand it up. I like to say that literally when it comes to actually day-to-day interacting with an HC3 cluster, instead of needing that, you can take a kid straight out of the local community college still raving around his A+ certification like he's the first person to ever get one. Drop him in and he can make it go. HC3 through Visual Edge, it just fits. Flat out. For what it costs to build that legacy infrastructure for servers and switches and SAN and a hypervisor and all of the licensing, heck, you can put an HC3 cluster at site A, a cluster at site B, have real-time replication with failover and failback between them, and still have budget left over. I can sit and run on about all of the different places that HC3 fits, but I think you guys might already be picking up on that, from the smallest of the small to the cloud and everywhere in between.
And we are going to get a copy of this deck out to all of our attendees as well, too, because I think there are definitely some good deep dive information in there that we want to be sure to share with everybody.
One last thing I want to leave folks with, Holly, and it's right here.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about what you need to get with your infrastructure. I'm going to do just the opposite. This is what you don't need with HC3. You'll find that throughout the entire stack, the entire solution. On that note, back to you, Holly.
Thanks so much, Alan. I know that we've got some great information. We hope that everybody here was able to learn something new, and you're going to get this recording and you'll get that deck. And if you have questions about specifics, that's what we're here for. Please reach out to us, to your local team that invited you here, and we want to make sure that we can be a resource for you. And so without further ado, we are going to go ahead and launch a final poll while you all are on here. There may be some extra chances to win some prizes if you all can participate in this poll. So I'm just going to throw that out there. This one is not anonymous, but if you want to go ahead and do that, we have some some options that we want to hear from you on to make our content continue to grow and be better. And at the same time, we also just wanted to go ahead and announce our winners for these amazing prizes that we're giving away today. Can you all see my screen with the prizes? So we are giving away an exclusive Pro Football Hall of Fame museum tour. We are also giving away a Hall of Fame class of 2020 autographed football. And we are giving away the Pro Football Hall of Fame prize pack. So our first prize for the exclusive Pro Football Hall of Fame museum tour, and I believe we can do that virtually as well if you can't get up there, and obviously we've got some situations going on for travel in the world, but our first prize winner is Jordan Grant. So Jordan, congratulations. Our second prize winner for the Hall of Fame class of 2020 autographed football is Lori Dennis. Lori, congratulations. I've seen that. It is beautiful. It's going to look great in a home office or your work office, wherever you're working today. And then our last prize is for Pro Football Hall of Fame prize pack for Michael Schoendorf. So Michael, congratulations for that amazing prize pack as well. And thank you everyone for joining us. We're just going to take one last look here at our Q&A. It looks like we've gotten all of our questions typed and answered, but if you have any additional questions, please just reach out to us at any time. We're always here to help. I want to thank our panelists, Alan and Peter, and a special thank you to Kevin for joining us today. Anything to close, Kevin, before we let everyone get back to their day?
No, I just want to thank you for your time today. And I totally understand that there are some people that just aren't football fans, but I sat here and listened to VPNs and HC3s, and I think I probably learned a whole lot more about IT and protecting my home system than somebody might have learned about football. But thank you so much. I think the one thing that stood out for me is resiliency. Being able to adapt in uncertain times and always going back to the foundation, fundamentals that got us to where we're started at. So I appreciate you guys taking the time and listening to me, and thank you for having me be a part of it.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Thank you, Alan and Peter. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll let you all get back to your day. Thanks so much again. Bye.